this is Joe Bolen, and today we're going to look at the ClickOnce method to deploy our program. Up to this point, we have just run our program in debug mode, and we've basically finished our program, and we're really happy with where we're at with our program. Now it's time for us to present that program in a way that we can give it to another user so they can enjoy the fruits of our labor and run that program as well, be it a game or something related to a business. So let's take a look at some of the methods that we can use to deploy. One of the easiest methods is that we compile the program in release form, and we take the release folder and we copy all the objects in the release folder to another computer. That's called the Xcopy method of deployment. Another more involved one, which takes a little bit more research on how to do, is the install shield approach, where we actually create a package of the objects that we need plus any other things we want to change during the installation, and we deploy an install shield package for deployment. But Microsoft gives us with Visual Studio a third option, which is very nice, and that's the ClickOnce method of deployment. And that's what we're going to use in this series. And in this particular episode, we're going to look at that ClickOnce method. Half the fun is being able to create a program, but the other half is being able to share it with someone else. So let's learn how to share that program with someone else. Let's go take a look, first of all, at the program we're working with. And we've been working since lesson 11 with the very simple calculator. And you'll see the very simple calculator up here in the design view of Visual Studio. It is just a simple form with 5 buttons, 2 text boxes, and a label for the result when we process it. It just basically does what we want it to do, and it doesn't have a lot of bells and whistles, but it's pretty nice for one of our first projects to learn how to work with. And it's sort of fun to be able to share that with someone else if you like. And so I'll show you how to do that. Let me first of all take you to the different sites where you can learn more about this particular project. Everything with the very simple calculator I put out at 3 different sites. First of all, the YouTube videos series itself is out there under Bolen Presents at YouTube. So go out there and take a look at all the videos, and especially look at video 11, where we began the project from our simple design ideas using pseudocode and presenting it further. As we go through the series, we come to this point and click once where we're getting ready to actually deploy it. The screen capture is located at Imgur, and also the code is at Pastebin. So if you would like to check out the code or the screen capture for this, go to these sites. Right now, if you'd like, pause the video and copy down the information, and then go out with your browser to these sites, and you'll see the full code that we use for the very simple calculator. Okay, let's go back into Visual Studio and take a look at the process. So I got Visual Studio going. I'm going to go full screen at this point in time. And one of the things I'd like to do with my form is make it a little bit more unique. Right now it has just a generic icon for this, and I'd like to make it a very special icon. And so I have already created an icon for my projects that I create, and I'm going to pull that in. Now, it's not required that you do this, but it just makes it a little nicer, and I'd like to show you how that's done. So first of all, let me go to the project itself. So I'm going to go over in Solution Explorer on the right side, click on the project, and then I'm going to go to the properties of the project by clicking on the little wrench. And one of the things we'll see here is a resource location on the far left, and I'm going to click on Resources. And right now there's nothing there, and we're going to put in a resource. So I'm going to change this from string to icons, and then I'm going to go click on Add Resource, and I'm going to click on Add Existing File, which I already have an icon for. And it'll pull up my Explorer at this point, and what I want to do is go to location where I have this information at. So I'll go back up to my documents. In my settings, go to the projects video, get to the projects, and I'm going to go to Visual Studio. You can see where it's at. Here's Visual Studio 13. Go to the projects folder where I've got this at, and I've got a special folder called Icons and Strong Name. And there's my icon that I want to get. Now I can drag this right to the form, but I've selected to go through the Explorer. And so I've selected this icon. I say open, which pulls it in. And now it's in my resource file. And you'll see over on the far side, over on the left side, you'll see that there's my icon showing up. And I'm going to highlight that icon. And I'm going to change some of the properties. First of all, the build action right now is none. I'm going to change that so it'll be included into our deployment. I'm going to make it part of the content for the build action. And I'm going to say copy to output directory if newer on that, so that it'll always go out there. If I change something, even if it's the same name, it'll go out to my resource folder. Okay, so I've got that set. It's in my resource area at that point. Let's come back to the application area of this one. Right now we have just a generic icon for the application, but since I've now put this in the resource folder, I can hit the drop down on the icon, and you'll see in the resource folder is my icon. Mine happens to be called Bolen.ico. And so this pulls in my icon folder or a file, and this will then be part of how that shortcut is displayed once I deploy it. Now let's go back to our form itself on that. So I'm going to go back to the designer and highlight the form, and I'm going to go over on my properties window of the form and change the icon for this one. So instead of the default, I'm going to hit the ellipsis, and I'm going to go and bring in the icon again. And now you see my icon in the part of the title area of the form. So now I've made it a little bit more special at this point. I'm going to hit Save All to make certain everything I have is set. Once again, I'm going to now change over to make it a release version, because I already know that this works. I've tested it. So I'm going to go to the release side, and we're going to do a build. I'm going to do come up here to the build on the menu and say build solution. At this point, I have created, and I'll show you by coming over to the Solution Explorer. I'm going to do show all files, and you'll see a folder called bin, and in the bin folder is a release folder, and in the release folder is our new compiled program. Now we can go out through our Explorer to the same site and go into the release, and you'll see everything there. And if I were to copy this whole folder with all these objects to my location that I might want on another computer, I'd have all the files. This is called an X copy if I take all this information from the release folder. So I can copy it that way. But we're going to do it ClickOnce method. So once again, I'm going to go back into the project, highlight the project itself, go to the properties, and let's do the process of creating the ClickOnce release. Okay, at this point I'm going to come over, and one of the things I'm going to check is my references to make certain that everything in my references are there, and I'm going to check for unused references. I'm going to click on that and see if there's any unused references. At this point we see these, and I can get rid of them on that by selecting them. I'm going to undo the deployment one, but I do not need system data or the system data set extension, so I'm going to remove those. And that reduces a little bit down in terms of size of the particular object I'm compiling. Then I'm going to go over to the settings option on the far left. I'm sorry, the signing option. And you'll see I have signed for a ClickOnce manifest. And this is what we're going to do. So I'm going to click on that button on that. And if you have a certificate authority to bring in that you have, this would be where you go select from the store or from a file. But since I don't have one, I'm going to create a test certificate. And we can create one, and we put in our test password for it. So I'll put in a key on this. And now I'll have a temporary key made. And we can see the key will expire at a certain point in time for us. Also, we can add in a time stamp information, which I'm going to pull in right now, so that if for some reason the code is past the time of my test for that temporary key, the timestamp server will be available that will validate that this has not changed since the time of the original deployment. Then we can also sign the assembly, and I'm going to click on that option as well. And we can choose one of the strong names on that, and I happen to have one, so I'm going to do a browse. And I'm going to go up to my projects area where I have my strong name already stored and click to open it. And at this point, I've got everything set in terms of signing. We're signing the area for our ClickOnce, and then we're also signing the assembly. These are two separate things on that, and you need to read up on a strong name file for that if you don't have a file already available for you. You can also click on New if you don't have one, and once again, you can create one by keying in the name that you want for your strong name and the passwords that you want to have for that. Since I already have one at this point, I have selected go with the one that I have, and I'm going to bring that back in. And so I'm going to use this for all my compiles. Now let's look at extensions. At this point, I have none there, and I want to go now to security, and I want to enable ClickOnce security settings for this one, and I want it full trusted for this application, and that's set. So remember to go into the security area, enable ClickOnce security settings, and make it full trusted. Then I'm going to go to the publish spot, and here's where we can direct where we're going to output the files for our ClickOnce. If I leave it with its default, it'll create a directory called publish in my project area that I can use. But I have already out on my computer another location that I'd like to use. So I'm going to hit the ellipsis button and come over to a location on my U drive called deploy. And in deploy, I'm going to create a special one, very simple calculator. Will be the folder's name where I want this to go. Now, if we had an IIS server, we could go there, or an FTP site, or a share, we could use that as well. But for my purposes, just a simple spot on the hard drive is where I'm going to deploy this, and I'm deploying it to the deploy folder, and then I'm creating a special folder for this project to go into. And since I have not created it before, I'll say yes to create the folder, and we're ready to go for that. Now, at this point, I can set how I want that application to be available. In this case, since I'm going to make a CD or flash drive type of installation, What I'm going to do is have this available offline as well as when it's available online. So that would be my default selection most of the time. Now let's take a look at the application files by hitting the application files button. And you'll see that I have 3 basic files coming in. My resource folder with my icon is coming in, the calculator itself, and what's called the manifest for this application. So those are the files that will be part of this compile. I'm going to say OK. Now I'm going to look at the resources, prerequisites on this, and since I compiled this with a .NET Framework level 4, this one is highlighted. It needs to be in place on the system that it's going to be installed. If not, it'll need to be brought in during the deployment, and also it will need to have the Windows installer. Now the default is to go out to the vendor's website, in this case Microsoft, to get those 2 spots. And notice also we can have the SQL Server and some other things depending on the kinds of project we're working on. I can also deploy it with my own application, so it's all available. But for a target release of .NET Framework 4, most units at this point in time have the level 4 on their system. So we shouldn't have too much of a problem there. But if not, they'll be redirected to Microsoft to get the Framework 4 downloaded to their system. We'll click OK on this. Then I'm going to go look at updates. In this case, since it's a CD installation, I'm not going to click this, but if I were to have it on an IIS server or a share, perhaps I would like the program to go out and check to see if there's a newer version. And here's where I would click on that. But since we're doing a CD or flash drive deployment, I'm going to leave this alone. Okay. Now I'm going to look at options. And here are a couple things where we need to put something in. First of all, I need to put in a publisher's name. And part of this is because this will be how it goes into the start area of the menu. So I'm going to call this Bolen Computers as the main hierarchy of my tree structure. And the product name in this case is very simple, calculator. So that is my product name, and these 2 are necessary, and you need to fill these out. This will be how the user will see it when they go to their start menu. Then if we were to have this as an IIS installation or a share, we might want to add some of the other information about where they go for an error, for support, but this is being a CD is not necessary. Then I can come over here to the deployment area. And one of the things we want to check, since this will be for a CD or flash drive, is I want to also include this option. And if I were to have it such that I had any other things there, I would choose those at this time. But we're going to do it for CD, so I want to make certain this one has been added to the checks. Looking at the manifest itself, we can want to create a desktop shortcut, and I definitely want to do that. If I were passing in parameters into this program, I also would want to check allow URL parameters to be passed to application. This one doesn't require it, so I'll leave that unchecked at this point. And at this point, I'm set with everything under the manifest part of the publishing options. And then file associations. This is where I would put in the file extension. For example, if I wanted to associate it with a text file, I'd have .txt here, probably say something like plain text format for the description. Then I create a special program ID to identify that, and I can also have an icon that will go to that particular extension and be associated with it. So we've seen where we have like Microsoft Word file, which has a DOC or DOCX extension, has its own little icon that helps us know it's a Microsoft Word application file. we can do that as well at this point. But this one doesn't need an extension because it's a standalone program, so I'll leave this blank. Okay, we've got everything set. Now, one of the things too is as we change and update the system, I can change the revisions and the build numbers, and I can do that automatically by leaving this checked, which I will. At this point, I can just hit Publish Now, and we're right now compiling that program again, and it is now popped up with the deployment folder, and I have my files that I need for my deployment. And all I need to do is come back up one level, take this whole very simple calculator folder and put it on a flash drive or burn it to a CD. But I will also show you at this point in time how we install that. So I'm going to click on this setup, and it'll go through the installation method. And since this has not been signed, we get a warning message on this because it's not a certificate authority server going out to it. Publisher's unknown. And so I'm going to say install anyway, because I know I'm trusted at least. And it'll do the install, and there it starts, and it's up and running. So we have the calculator running on our system at this point. Now let me also show you, I'm going to close out the program, and I want to minimize this down for a minute, and I want to show you that we can go to the desktop, and I'm going to go to my start area, my desktop, and you'll see very simple calculator came in as the last program I just ran, and you'll also see all programs. I'll drop down, and you'll see Bolen computers there, which was the company name that I keyed in, and you'll see that one of the last ones I installed is the very simple calculator, and I can click on here and run this as well. So we've been able to deploy this very easily. So the important thing to remember when we do this is that when we end up with our final outcome, we'll end up with a location that will either burn to a CD. In my case, it was on the deploy folder that I had. Let me get that back again. And that particular folder in this case was the very simple calculator. And we just want to copy this whole folder. So you right click on it and burn it to a CD or copy it to a flash drive, and everything necessary to install it will be right there. And if it is such that it auto runs enabled, it'll fire up the setup exe automatically and install it. Now, if we were to change the version and update our program for some purpose, all we'd have to do is publish this. This would be updated here. We can click on this again, and we get our program updated with a newer version. So this is a nice method to install your program and have fun with it. And so we've created our very simple calculator. And just to confirm that it does work, we'll type in 15 and 2, and we'll try addition, which will give us 17. We'll do multiplication, which gives us 30. We can try subtraction, which should give us 13. And we can try division, which will give us 7.5. And our clear button works fine. And so we've got ourselves now a nice little program with our own little special icon there to see. And just to show you, we also have on our desktop, let me minimize this down, a brand new icon available to us to use. And so I've got the icon because I selected that as one of the options, and so the icon's available as well with my particular icon that I added into the file, and it also works to pull up and run the program. So try the ClickOnce method, learn how to use it. It's a great simple tool to get most programs deployed, and it does it in a very nice professional way. Later on in the series, we'll add a little bit more to this so that you'll learn some of the other things that go with the ClickOnce method. But for a simple project like the Very Simple Calculator, which is basically a standalone program that doesn't need to pull in any other files with an association, this works out very nicely. And as you're beginning to learn to do some of your projects, the ClickOnce method is quite nice. You can also use it with database files as well. It takes a little bit more learning about the process for database files, but it's still a valid way to deploy. And if you later on need to, you can use the install shield method to deploy, and you always have available to you also the Xcopy, where we just copy the files in the release folder after we compile it. All those methods, the Xcopy of the release folder, the install shield, which is more involved, and our ClickOnce method are nice methods to use. However, I really like the ClickOnce method, and I hope you'll give it a try too. So try the ClickOnce method, learn how to use it, watch this video again, and see how I did it. And I think you'll find out, as like I do, that it's a pretty nice way to deploy your project. So till then, get your hands dirty in the code, do that ClickOnce method, and take care.